Okay, so we have this problem that involves dividing money with a mixed number. We are going to divide money, which obviously involves a decimal, by a mixed number, which, as you can see soon on, we're going to turn into an improper fraction. So let's see this question. Sally paid $8.55 for 4.5 yards of cloth. How much was the cloth per yard? Round to the nearest cent when necessary. Now this later part of the question, the directions later on in the question, say to round to the nearest cent when necessary, and most students tend to start worrying about that right away, and I don't want you to worry about that. I see a lot of my students do that, and they start rounding before they even start multiplying or dividing, and you don't. This instruction here is just for the very, very end, when you get your final answer, and you now have to put it in form of money. So we'll worry about that later on, so just keep that in the back burner for now. And let's just deal with the question that it has for us. So we're going to take $8.55 and divide that by 4.5. Now, as we know with fractions or mixed numbers, you have to change that mixed number to an improper fraction. So we're going to rewrite the first part again and divide by its improper fraction, which is 9/2. Now, if you don't remember how to change mixed numbers to improper fractions, you can see an earlier video that I had made. I will direct you to it. Or you can see your notes from chapter 2. Okay, so as we know with dividing, we have to use KFC, which is keep, flip, and change. And even though this is not a fraction, well, it's a decimal. We have decimals there, which decimals are fractions, as we know. But essentially, we are dividing by a fraction, so we're still going to use that KFC method. And we're going to flip the second fraction. Okay? I'm going to set this expression up in a way of solving it. So I put 8.55 over 1, and now I'm just going to simply multiply across the numerators and multiply across the denominators. And if you do your work off onto the side and you get 8.55 times 2, you're going to see that that's 17.1. Okay, and 1 times 9 is 9. So now, as I always say, fractions are division. This is 17.1 divided by 9. And again, we're going to go off to the side, a little bit of scrap work on the side, and set up our division so we can solve. 9 goes into 17. Once we have 8 left over, I'm going to do a little short division here. Well, many of you do enjoy the short division. Okay, so I have my answer here as 1.9, and this is where I'm going to look at the end of the directions here. It says round to the nearest cent when necessary. And I know that I have to answer this question in terms of money because I want to know how much was the cloth per yard. So I can't say the cloth was 1.9 per yard. That doesn't make sense. So we have to answer it in proper format. We know we have to write it in money form. And being that it's 1.9, we want to round to the nearest cent when necessary. Well, we don't really have to round, but we do have to include the fact that there is 0 cents. So our final answer is $1.90 per yard. Okay, so along the same topic of multiplying and dividing money with fractions, we have this problem of multiplying a fraction with money. So we're going to take 5/8 and multiply, because we know that's what the word of means. Of usually means multiplication. So 5/8 times $12.40 is really the problem we're trying to solve here. I'm going to set it up as a math problem. Put it all over 1. Sorry, that's a little crooked fraction. And for those of you that just like to multiply straightforward through the tops and the bottoms without simplifying within, which I'll talk about in a moment, let's just go ahead and multiply 5 times $12.40, or 12.40 in this case of just the basic multiplication. And you're going to get 62. It's going to be all over 8 times 1. So we have 62 over 8. Now when you take 62 over 8, that's the same thing as saying 62 divided by 8. So you have to, if you can't do that in your head so quickly, we're going to go off to the side and do that division. And we know that 8 goes into 62 at least 7 times, but we're going to have some left over. So I'm going to put that decimal and the 2 zeros behind it. And you know how I always usually put by default those 2 zeros behind it, whether or not I really need them. Raise that decimal to the roof. So 8 goes into 62 7 times, and then I have 6 left over. So 8 goes into 60 another 7 times, and then I'll have 4 left over. Again, I'm doing the short division. 8 goes into 40 5 times, and then I'm done. So the answer here is 7.75, but being that we are multiplying a fraction by money, we want to answer this in terms of money. So this is actually $7.75. I'm going to go back using the same problem, but some of you like to shortcut it and do that simplifying within the question or the example before we actually solve it. So we're going to divide across the bottom denominator with the top numerator of the opposite fraction. You can do that as long as you can divide it evenly. You don't get any remainders, and they're the common factors that you have that you can divide both this and this by. And you can also do it this way, but we see that 5 and 1 you just cannot do that. But 8 and 12.40 we know that we can. And I'm going to divide that by 8, obviously. And if you're not quite sure where I got the idea to divide it by 8, that just goes back to your basic multiplication, division skills, and the rules of divisibility. So I'm going to divide 12.40 by 8, and I can do this up here, but for those of you that are less experienced and probably still need to see the actual division of it, I'm going to divide it over here. Again, I'm going to raise that decimal to the roof. And I know that 8 goes into 12 once. We do the short division up here, and I have, raise it to the root, sorry, then I have 4 left over. So 8 goes into 44 now, I know 5 times. Okay? And then I have 4 left over, and then 8 goes into 40. Another 5 times. So technically I can reduce this now to something a little easier to solve. It's a lot easier to multiply 5 by 1.55 than it is by 12.40. And then when you have to simplify it and change the improper fraction to the mixed number and you have larger numbers, it does leave room for error. So if you can simplify it and make it easier, go right ahead, and if not, it's okay. You can stick with the old skills of just doing it straightforward. So now if you take $1.55 and multiply it by 5, obviously you're going to get the $7.75 over 1 in forms of answering this in terms of money. It's going to be $7.75.